They called it a joke, a literal scam, tulip mania for nerds. And yet, $1 trillion. That is the market cap right now. It's literally worth more than JP Morgan. It's worth more than Visa. For years, skeptics just laughed and called it magic internet money. So we're looking at a massive paradox here. How does a digital token, something with absolutely zero physical form, command that kind of global wealth? Really, why does a piece of computer code actually have value? Well, to figure that out, we can't just look at the math. We have to look at the massive problem it was trying to solve in the first place. Part 1, the middleman problem. Let's rewind to 2008. The financial system completely broke. Banks were gambling with regular people's money on subprime mortgages, and they lost badly. And while millions of normal people lost their homes, the government stepped in and printed trillions to bail out those exact same banks. But then, right in October 2008, an anonymous person named Satoshi Nakamoto published a short 9-page document. And it wasn't a political protest, it was a mathematical solution. See, in the traditional world, you always have the middleman. Let's call him Bob the banker. Every single time you swipe your card for a coffee, Bob takes a cut. If Bob doesn't like what you're doing, he can just freeze your account. Satoshi's vision bypassed Bob entirely. It was a purely peer-to-peer system, direct transfers, absolutely no intermediaries, unstoppable cash. But that brings up a huge issue. How do you stop people from just copying and pasting digital money like a JPEG? That brings us to part 2, the shared notebook. Okay, so you've definitely heard the buzzword blockchain. Let's ditch the jargon. A blockchain is really just a shared notebook. Instead of a bank holding the one and only master record of your money, a public record is copied onto thousands of computers simultaneously all over the planet. If someone tries to cheat and spend the same coin twice, the rest of the network looks at their notebooks and instantly rejects the fake transaction. So how do new pages actually get added to this notebook? Well, computers around the world race to solve incredibly complex math puzzles, running trillions of calculations every single second. The winner of that race verifies the new block of transactions, and in return, they earn freshly created Bitcoin as a reward. This process is called mining, and what it does is replace blind trust in a bank with raw, verifiable math. And the result of relying on that math? Over 15 years, there have been 0 successful hacks on the core network. None. In economics, there's this concept called the Lindy Effect. It basically states that the longer something survives, the more likely it is to keep surviving into the future. With every single year the network runs flawlessly, the collective trust in its security just keeps growing. Part 3, the scarcity bucket. All right, this is where the economics finally click into place. I want you to think of Bitcoin as a heavy steel bucket and traditional fiat currency, like your dollars, as an inflating balloon. Governments are constantly printing more money, inflating that balloon, and slowly bleeding out the purchasing power of your savings. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is that steel bucket. It's a bucket specifically because of the 21 million rule. There is an absolute maximum limit of coins, forever. It's hard-coded and cryptographically locked by the network. That makes it completely immune to government printing presses. Because the supply is permanently fixed, any new demand is just like water pouring into that steel bucket. The bucket physically cannot expand, so the value simply has to rise. But we need to look at part 4, the uncomfortable reality. Because despite all this hype about a perfectly shared, equal system, let's look at who actually owns it. Roughly 2% of addresses currently control 95% of the supply. The remaining 98% of normal, everyday users, they hold just 5%. When ownership is that incredibly top-heavy, a small group of large holders, often called whales, can easily trigger massive price swings. It is absolutely not a stable environment. And what about using it as everyday cash? Well, we actually ran the experiment. Back in 2021, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. The real-world result? 98% of international remittances there still go through traditional banks. Less than 2% actually use Bitcoin. As a daily medium of exchange, it's clunky, it faces massive friction, wild volatility, and honestly, it largely fails the test. So, if it doesn't work great as cash to buy a coffee, and it doesn't produce quarterly earnings like an Apple stock, where is the price actually coming from? Economists often point to the greater fool theory. This theory states that an asset's price is driven purely by the hope that someone else, a greater fool, will buy it from you later for a higher price. The very uncomfortable reality is that current prices heavily depend on a constant, unending stream of new buyers entering the market. And there is one final, truly devastating risk to cutting out that middleman. Meet James Howells. In 2013, he accidentally threw away an old hard drive containing 8,000 Bitcoin. Today, that lost hard drive is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's currently buried somewhere under thousands of tons of garbage in a landfill in Wales. You see, in this system, there is no forgot my password button. There is no 1-800 customer service line you can call to reverse a mistake. Not your keys, not your coins. That is the absolute golden rule of this space. Removing the bank means you take on 100% unforgiving personal responsibility. Make one mistake, lose your private key, and your money is gone. Forever. So, that leaves us with the ultimate question. Is Bitcoin the final evolution of hard money, a cryptographically secure escape hatch from a broken financial system? Or is it just the largest, most highly engineered experiment in the greater fool theory the world has ever seen? The tech is undeniably revolutionary, but the risks are absolute. Now that you've watched this explainer and know how the machine actually works underneath the hood, which side are you on?